Is what I see what God sees? Is what I see what God sees? In other words, don't be short-sighted. Don't be short-sighted. Recently, someone sent me the song. It's by Phil Wickham, a Christian song. It's called "The Battle Belongs." And listen to it. It talks about, like, I see this, but Lord, you see this. Listen to the words of the song. When all I see is the battle, you see my victory. When all I see is the mountain, you see a mountain moved. And as I walk through the shadows, your love surrounds me. There's nothing to fear now, for I am with you. And then it's the refrain. So when I fight on my knees, my hands lifted high, O Lord. The battle belongs to you. And every fear I lay at your feet. I'll sing through the night. This battle belongs to you. This battle belongs to you. Maybe we could say it this way. Why are we worried? Why are we worried? Is what I see what God sees? The apostles would have had reason to seemingly have worry, right? A storm has come, a squall has come up. It's dangerous in any water situation. The winds were high, water's leaking into the boat. Jesus, we're all going to perish. Don't you care about this? And Jesus wakes up. Calm, be still. And immediately the winds die down, and so do the waves. And then he looks at them. Why are you terrified? Do you not yet have faith? Is what I see what God sees? Is what I see what God sees? In other words, there's this reality that if Jesus is with us, we have nothing ever to worry about, no matter the circumstance. Now, it doesn't mean everything's going to magically, all the seas and the winds are just going to calm around us. That's not actually usually how it happens. It usually happens in a way that's a little bit different. I saw a little Christian saying on social media. It said this: faith doesn't always take you out of the problem. Faith takes you through the problem. Faith doesn't always take away the pain. Faith gives you the grace to endure the pain. Faith doesn't always take you out of the storm. Faith gives you calm amidst the storm. Isn't that beautiful? Faith, the grace of God, or the presence of Jesus Christ gives us calm within the storm. It's something that happens within. Again, it might not be from outside, but it happens from in. And that's what comes when we have that sense of the Lord is with us. We have nothing to be afraid of. We have nothing to be anxious over. We should have a conviction. Lord, give us the conviction that you are with us, and let us see our life as you see our life, knowing that you are with us no matter the circumstances, to give us calm even amidst the greatest storms. Now, this is the year of St. Joseph, and it's also Father's Day. So actually, the most of my homily I'm reflecting on St. Joseph. Whenever you talk about the saints, there's things you can learn about the saints. We can learn about the Blessed Mother and realize, wow, she surrendered in that circumstance. She trusted and loved in these circumstances. St. Paul the Apostle, you can learn from St. Paul, you can learn from St. Peter. Well, this is the year of St. Joseph. And I was reflecting on what are three adjectives about St. Joseph. Because whenever you learn about the saints, first and foremost, we're called to imitate their virtues and also ask for their prayers with all the saints, but St. Joseph in particular. We're called to imitate their virtues and ask for their prayers and know of their particular love for us. So the three adjectives I'd like to reflect on in light of the virtues of Joseph is this. I'd like to reflect on faithful Joseph, trusting Joseph, and hidden Joseph. Faithful Joseph, trusting Joseph, and hidden Joseph. Let's begin with the first, faithful Joseph. Someone best described him, and he is the original faithful Joe, isn't he? The one who was there. And I remember, I don't think I really ever had a full appreciation for Joseph. And there was a group of priests and we were driving up in northern New York, and we were going to go up to Montreal, which is the largest shrine of St. Joseph in the world. There's something unique about Canada. I don't know if you know this. The founding of Montreal was someone who had a deep devotion of Joseph, and they literally they brought the Sisters of St. Joseph, and then later, many years later, there's this big shrine to St. Joseph. It's a special place for Joseph, not too far from us. And yet when I'm reading this, we're in the car and I'm with a group of priests, and I'm like, hey, let's read this letter that John Paul II wrote about St. Joseph. And I remember just hearing about Mary's love for Joseph. That Joseph was Mary's closest confidant. She would have leaned on Joseph. She was drawn to Joseph. And it's like, what kind of stature would Joseph have to have that Mary says, this is a man of faith. This is a man of faith. Joseph would have been known for his kindness, I'm sure. Someone who was that virtuous, he would have been kind, tender. Joseph was a man of faith. He loved God. Mary would not have been drawn to someone who didn't love God. No, he loved God. He was a righteous man. He would have been a hard worker, dedicated. In this picture here he's got his tools at his belt, right? Hard worker, although he would have been amongst the poor. He wasn't blue collar. He was amongst the poor, right? When they offered the turtle doves, that's the offering for those who are poor. And so this idea of he was a good man. He was such a man of faith, and Mary loved him. She would have looked to him for many things. And I remember thinking about this. John Gerstmeyer, we were given little talks on St. Joseph. John Gerstmeyer, in his talk on Thursday, used an explanation of something that I've always kind of known, but he articulated it in a beautiful way. When he was talking about Mary was betrothed to Joseph, it's more than an engagement. It's not just an engagement that they had. No, they were legally married. It would have been something done publicly. They would have been already united to each other, although they didn't live together. They would have, in a certain sense, they belonged to one another. Like Mary was all in with Joseph and Joseph with Mary. Like that is a beautiful gift that faithful Joseph. And then think about him as a father of Jesus. He raised God, literally. Who am I going to put in charge of raising my son? God the Father thought. And this idea, if you were God the Father and you had the opportunity to choose any man who was going to raise the Son of God, how much more would this have been a virtuous man, a man of faith? He raised God. How beautiful it is, the holiness, the faithfulness, the goodness of Joseph. Let it be known to all about the goodness of Joseph, the faith of Joseph, that we're called to imitate his example. So he was a faithful Joseph, but he was also a trusting Joseph. You know, trust isn't something you just do one time. It's something you have to do over and over through whatever life circumstances has. That's actually how we grow in trust of God. When we have more difficult circumstances, it's a new opportunity to trust and entrust ourselves one more time. And especially in this new circumstance that we have. Joseph would have lived that. Here, Joseph, in a certain sense, was trusting Joseph, the sense of when Mary was found with child, a righteous man, actually, according to Jewish law, if you were betrothed and not living together, and she was found with pregnant, actually a righteous man was required to divorce a woman, and he just chose to do it quietly until the intervention of a dream. And from that dream, he trusted God. Take Mary into your home, and he did. Did he fully understand what was happening? He probably didn't. There's plenty of circumstances that we have that we don't understand, but we're called to follow, and trusting Joseph did that. Think about trusting Joseph when Mary was 9 months pregnant and there was the census and they had to travel to Bethlehem. Well, he wasn't going to leave Mary behind, but he had to be trusting Joseph on the way to Bethlehem that would have been very crowded and busy. Were they going to find a place? I pray so. But trusting Joseph knew God would provide, and God would provide in these unique circumstances. Though there was no room in the inns, there would be a place in the stable, which would be part of the mystery and the providence of God, to show how far God himself descended to be born among us. Trusting Joseph would have, when he had the dream and heard, take Mary and the child and go to Egypt. They hadn't packed for it. It was just a journey, and now they're moving all of their things, and for however long, it was a step of faith for Joseph. And the gift of Joseph was, take the next good step. I don't have to see step 2 or step 4 or step 24, but I know I'm called to take the next good step, and Joseph was the great witness of trusting Joseph. God will provide in the things that we need in the time that we need him. So how beautiful it is that we have faithful Joseph and trusting Joseph. And finally, hidden Joseph. Now, if we were to be honest with our life, most of our life is lived in a very hidden way. Most people don't see the day-to-day life. There was something beautiful. I had a beautiful funeral of Anne Gagnon, who just passed away, and her funeral was the other day. And she had 4 sons, and I was talking to one of the sons a couple of nights before, and I was like, tell me about your mother. And he's like, it's just personal. Like, I can't explain it. It's like trying to paint a picture that you can't paint because it wouldn't do it justice. And here was the son with the mother of like, I can't explain it. We'll see that this reality of hidden Joseph, that the life, the faithfulness of Joseph's care for Mary cannot be put into words. Even if it was put into words, it wouldn't really explain it well. Joseph's care for the child Jesus, in caring for their needs, it's part of the hidden life. Isn't that the hidden life of husbands and wives and mothers and fathers? It's the hidden life that most people don't see, but God sees. And as reflected more specifically, again, Joseph raised God. Joseph raised the Son of God, right? It would have been Joseph himself that would have taught Jesus about be faithful to the Father. Be faithful to the Father. Now, did Jesus need to know that growing up? Actually, he did in a human way, that call. And Joseph would have been an encourager of Jesus. Always do what the Father is asking of you. He would have learned that from St. Joseph. Joseph, even from his witness of his life, I'm sure he would have shared with Jesus some of the things that I had to do this. So he was a model of faithfulness, even for the Son of God. That is beautiful. And what about, again, we speak about St. Joseph we have no words or none of his phrases in the Bible, but that doesn't mean Joseph didn't speak. He's silent. We don't have any of his words in the scriptures, but Joseph would have spoke. But you and I know it becomes even more louder because he spoke with his actions. And so so sometimes we might even be able to glean little echoes of Joseph in the words of Jesus. Seminary Daniel in the car was sharing with us something he learned in Scripture, reminding us, he says, think about even some of the parables. Some of the parables that would have had some connection with Jesus' relationship with Joseph. What about building your house on a strong foundation? Where would have Jesus learned that? Joseph would have taught him, don't build a house on sand. Build it on a strong foundation. Otherwise, it'll collapse. So when Jesus is telling this parable, there's even echoes of Jesus' relationship ultimately with Joseph. Do you remember the movie The Passion of the Christ, for those who saw it? When he's going through the Passion, he has these flashbacks. Well, you know what one flashback that could have been put in there? Can you imagine the first time Jesus had to carry his cross and lift wood up on his shoulder? When he was picking up the wood that would have been very familiar to him all his life, he was a carpenter. He dealt with wood his whole life. Can you imagine when he carried the wood? Could have he had a flashback of memories of working and serving with Joseph? My brothers and sisters, something that was so familiar to him might have given him a little consolation, even at the beginning of the way of his cross. Remember, we have Joseph, most likely tradition has, Joseph most of likely would have died prior to the public ministry of Jesus. So his flashbacks remind him of Joseph, his father, who would have, you better believe, would have been there on the way of the cross if he was living. And what about this reality of Joseph was the father? A Jewish father taught their children prayers. He would have been praying night prayer and prayed the Psalms with his children or with his son. Do you know one of the Psalms that Jewish fathers would have taught their children at a very young age? Psalm 31, it also includes 31:5. And do you know what Psalm 31 includes the words that you would pray nightly? Into your hands, Lord, I commend my spirit. He would have heard that through the lips of Joseph. To prepare yourself, into your hands, Lord, I commend my spirit. So when Jesus said those words that he had said so often with Joseph on the cross, into your hands, Father, I commend my spirit, there would have been a richness and a calling of those maybe intimate times that he had spent with Joseph. My brothers and sisters, that's the hidden life. And you can only imagine, even ponder, what else does that include? You see, faithful Joseph is worthy of imitation. Trusting Joseph. We're called to trust and trust ourselves once again, just like Joseph had to do in an ongoing way throughout his life. And hidden Joseph reminds us of the hidden day-to-day life of doing what God is asking us to do as best as we know, and also through the prayers of St. Joseph. You know, he's worthy of imitation, but he's also, we need to know also the care of St. Joseph. Many people know the story of, right, asking Joseph to sell a house. That's a common kind of popular devotion. For jobs, he's a great intercessor because we have a devotion to St. Joseph the worker. Obviously, we have St. Joseph honored up here, a patron of the Holy Family, as a good father to ask him for his prayers. We also know that, have you ever heard the story of, there's a group of nuns that were praying, they needed a horse, and they're like, Joseph, will you intercede for us because we need to find a horse. We need a horse for our farm. And they drew a picture of a horse, but they forgot to put a tail on it. Well, it's interesting because when someone, like in the next few days, kind of providentially donated a horse, it was a horse without a tail. It was a horse without a tail. Just like on the picture they put in front of the statue of St. Joseph. You know the story of the famous staircase out in New Mexico. A group of nuns, they built this church, and the architect forgot to build a staircase between this choir loft that's like 2 stories high. It's a pretty high kind of choir loft. And the nuns were like, St. Joseph, will you pray? We need someone to build us a staircase. And this humble poor man showed up. And he said, I'll build you a staircase. And he built this spiral staircase that if you look it up, and it's an architectural impossibility. It doesn't make architectural sense. There's no supports for the staircase. But you can walk up and it can hold body weight, and it did for decades and for a long period of time. They now have it blocked off, but for years and years, people would go up and down this choir loft, but it makes no architectural sense of how there's any stability in the staircase without supports. They later found out that the wood was not only not from local trees, but could only be found near the Holy Land. My brothers and sisters, when we have needs and cares and concerns, ask for Joseph's prayers. You think if he cared for Mary and took care of her needs, if he cared about Jesus, not just as a child, but growing up in his needs, he's patron of the universal church. He cares for our needs too. Do you ask for his prayers? I think I told you the story when my sister, when I was discerning priesthood, and I was really like, I just want to know. Maybe it's priesthood, maybe it's not. I don't know. Maybe over the next 8 months I'll get my answer. And I had some inklings and drawing to priesthood, but my sister's like, why don't you do a novena to St. Joseph? And I'm like, okay, what does that mean? And she said, well, there's this little prayer, and there was this little pious language of, for all those who pray the novena, they can't but help get their prayers answered. And I'm like, okay, I'll pray the novena to St. Joseph. And I started praying this little novena to St. Joseph once a day. And I'd happen to go on a silent retreat, and yeah, I got some answers, but maybe 6 to 8 months down the road, maybe I'm called to priesthood, but I don't know. And it was shortly after that after this retreat, a friend of mine had asked me, Brian, did you make a decision on the retreat? No. And we were talking back and forth, and she had just had her wisdom teeth taken out, and so she was a little bit kind of loopy, like a little bit like, sometimes she'd kind of like fade and like a little bit be tired, and she would sit on the couch, I was sitting on the chair, and she said, Brian, you've already said yes with yours. She always used to ask me, is there anything, what's holding you back from priesthood? I'm like, well, there's this, and there's that, and there's this. And this time she said, Brian, you've already said yes with your heart. You just have to say, I will. And she kind of faded out for like about 15 seconds. And it was during that time I was given a grace I didn't have before, but a complete peace. That when she just rested her eyes for a brief moment and she said, I looked at her and I said, so-and-so, I think I'm going to apply to seminary. I was given the grace and the confidence and the peace to apply to seminary. And I've always had a peace since then. And when I'm telling my sister, again, a day or so later, I'm telling my sister, we're sitting in a room. This is the light side of the room. That's a dark side of the room. This is the living room. That's the dining room. I'm facing this way. My sister, Laurie, oldest sister, Laurie, is facing this way. I'm like, Laurie, and then this happened. And then this happened. And when I got to the climax of the story, I saw a statue in the distance. I'm like, is that a statue over there? She's like, yes. Who's it a statue of? St. Joseph. You see, I've been doing a novena and asking for clarity and discernment during the novena of St. Joseph, and I was given a singular grace to have a peace, to take a step forward that I did not have moments earlier. I attribute it to the prayers of St. Joseph. Do you have needs and concerns? Ask for Joseph's prayers. Does he care about us? You better believe it. You see, when you love Jesus, you love the people Jesus loves. You're concerned about their concerns. We have that with adopted fathers and mothers, right? When they care about us, they also care about the people we love. And that is the same thing with Joseph. Imitate Joseph's examples. Faithful Joseph, trusting Joseph and hidden Joseph. You see, maybe it sounds a little bit more, it sounds a little different. Faithful Sandy, trusting Don, hidden Sarah. These are virtues worthy of imitation. Yes, he was a husband and father, but he inspires us in his virtuous life to a faithful life, to a trusting life, to a hidden life. And know of his love and prayers. Ask for his prayers. He loves us and he cares about our needs. Don't be afraid and ask for St. Joseph's help. His intercession, and know of his love, because he's part of the communion of saints, the people we're going to meet. And just like he loved the Holy Family, so he loves you, and he loves our family. Ask for his prayers. He's on it. He will intercede for you, just like he has throughout the ages.